Hi, Dr. Diane here. In this video, I'm going to review Married at First Sight Season 14. But make sure that you subscribe and you leave plenty of comments because I'd love to get your feedback. I'm a reality dating expert and I like to analyze shows to see what, if anything, we can learn about dating and relationships. Stay to the end where I break down the lessons that we can learn from this show. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Admittedly, this is my first Married at First Sight season. I know I'm already late in the game. It's already season 14. But there are so many interesting things that I wanted to talk about, and so many of my followers said, please, Dr. Diane, break down this show, because there's therapists on the show, so I had high expectations for some things that we can talk about. Now, I want to talk first about my first impressions of the show, talk about the experts, talk about the process of matchmaking that brings us all the way up to decision day. Now, first off, my first impression is that, wow, up until season 14, 80,000 applicants have been interested enough in getting married at first sight. And in this season, in Boston, 1,400 people showed up. I think that says a lot about modern dating, that people hate online dating and they would rather have experts match them than swipe endlessly on an app. But my initial feedback is ugh, 37 episodes, really? With TikToks and Reels being so short and people's attention spans being so short, it felt like a ginormous commitment to watch this process. And I imagine that only the most loyal of followers would watch it all the way through. But I thought there were just a lot of fillers in the show, right? There's everybody predicting who's going to couple up. There are these after parties. And for me, I would have wished and wanted it to be a little bit more condensed because I'm really interested in the characters here. But having said that, I'm not so sure that the statistics are warranting the show, right? They have, in last season 13, none of the couples are together. And overall, their statistic rate is only 24% of people still being together. Now, with the divorce rate being anywhere from 40 to 50%, these statistics aren't great. But think about it. I really have compassion for these people who sign up for the show. It's a huge leap of faith to imagine that you're going to find love with a stranger. Okay, but let's talk about the matchmaking process in general because I find that fascinating. Do you think that therapists should be matchmakers? Leave your notes in the comments below. Because here's the thing. Therapists go to graduate school, right? I went to many years of graduate school, learned about couples therapy, relationships, depression, anxiety, you name it, lots of treatment. But do we actually learn about matchmaking, which is a different career? Okay, I have nothing but respect for Dr. Pepper Schwartz. She's been on the show since the beginning, Vivian Coles, and Pastor Calvin. I think all of them are great role models. They're happily married. They appear very competent, very professional. But I worry how invested they are in keeping people together because they're the ones who are also doing the matching, right? I do know matchmakers in particular, and it's a very specific skill. Also, I live in Silicon Valley where I know matchmakers who charge exorbitant amounts of money. And right, this would be prohibitive to most people. But matchmaking is really complex because you need a huge network of people, right? Do you remember Patty Stanger, the millionaire matchmaker? I used to love Patty's show. But what Patty did, and she didn't have great stats either, but what she did is that she would have her client, and instead of trying to match up the people she already has, she would interview people and try to get them in for her clients. And I think truly that's what a good matchmaker does. Finds out exactly what they want and then goes and finds that. But on the show, I don't know if we see how elaborate it is, but to me, the experts are really focusing on a person's readiness, right? There's a lot of emphasis. This person's ready, this person isn't. And so I also think about readiness as a sign about eagerness, right? Now, this can be an anxious attachment style red flag, okay? Let me explain. A person that has an anxious attachment style feels that they're very ready for love. Does that mean they're really ready for the commitment part? They're ready to not be single anymore. And so much emphasis is put on that. Like, here we have Mark. Who doesn't like Mark? Mark the shark, right? But he's obviously eager. He's tried twice. And the experts keep saying, oh, we really like Mark. We like Lindsey. She's great, but she's a fire starter. The experts talk about wanting to match those people. But I'm really looking at, are these great matches? And putting too much focus on a person's readiness, I don't know if we're really looking at true compatibility, right? Because Alyssa, let's face it, did she really get what she asked for, right? Does anybody really get exactly what they asked for? But I wondered if the show might talk about the process, that you're going to get excellent feedback, that you're going to get therapist-oriented tools, that you're going to get a good start, and focus a little bit less on the match, because if you don't think it's a great match, you're already at a sticking point, right? But if they're trying to use the concept of Indian arranged marriages, I don't really think that fits here, because we're not a society, the United States is not a society that really engages in that kind of thinking, right? Divorce is readily available, and I think that's a difficult one. But what I don't know is that, did they use compatibility scales? How really did they match that people? And I would love to actually talk to the experts to find out. But right off the bat for me, right, Jasmina, I'll use her as an example. She has a history of being with unavailable men. And now they're putting her with an unavailable man, right? Michael comes out and says himself that he has trouble being vulnerable, that he's really shut down, that his family thinks that he's closed off. So is that a good match? Right from the beginning. You might like both of them. You might like Jasmina and Michael, and I do too. But are they really going to be a good fit, right? Lindsey says that she needs a strong man, but Mark is really more of a nurturer. He's a caregiver. Olajuwon, he wants a traditional woman. Is Katina as traditional as he wants? You have to wonder. Okay, now at that point then, they do have a match, and I don't know, again, because I haven't seen the show before, do they come out and tell you, oh, I want more info? Oops, by the way, we've got a match for you. You're getting married in 2 weeks, because it seemed like that was the common theme here. And yes, this is a huge risk that people are taking. But what I really would hope is that there would be less time focused on the dress and convincing your family that this is a good thing, and maybe more time really preparing for what's to come. Because we see Alyssa, right? She buys 10 dresses and she calls that her preparation. But what about preparing people psychologically? What about talking about the we-ness of a union? What about talking about healthy marriages and what's required? And so what I feel like a lot of this, even though they're a couple, they're talking about decision day as a very unilateral personal decision, okay? And to me, that's a setup for it being more selfish as opposed to couple-oriented. All right, which brings me to the wedding day. And honestly, some of the matches to me feel a little bit sexist. Let me explain. Let's face it, Katina, Jasmina, beautiful black women. Olajuwon and Michael at the altar are like, wow, they're blown away. These women are beautiful. But are the women having the same experience? I didn't see any of the women blown away, right? Sure, Katina's pleased. She thinks Olajuwon is good looking. He has a nice body. Noi thinks that Steve is nice looking. But Jasmina never says that about Michael. Lindsey, the nicest thing she says about Mark is that he has a good smile. Which brings me to this idea that, is it more important that the men be satisfied with the choices? Because I get the sense that Alyssa, and I don't know what the build-up or the expectation is, obviously she's clearly pissed. Now, no one can defend Alyssa's behavior, probably not even Alyssa. And I think they probably set her up, quite honestly. She didn't think that all of those things were going to be shown. I felt bad for her later. But she really did ask for someone quite different, right? She wanted a cowboy with a dragon or a lion tat. And while Chris is a nice looking guy, she's not getting exactly what she wants. And I don't think it's just that. I think she really, and her mother put it well, that she needed someone who could quote unquote handle her. And I don't think Chris was that guy. Jasmina, right? She's tall. She's very elegant. Michael isn't quite a match for her on that sense. And you can see that she's not thrilled and she can't fake it necessarily. But I felt like the only authentic wedding is really Noi and Steve. They seemed well matched. They both looked happy. You know, Noi bringing out her traditional wedding garb. I thought that was really quite special. And now let's get to something else that I want you to take note of. This is a lesson in vetting, okay? In date coaching that I do, date therapy that I call it, it's important to vet your partner with your friends and family, right? Because first impressions are super important. And when it comes to vetting a partner, you want to be careful because these people are important to you and what other people think and feel is really crucial. But the timing of getting your friends and family to weigh in on a partner, especially this early on, feels like it's too much, right? So I use this analogy and I hope you can find it helpful. But at the start of a relationship, think about a budding relationship like a plant, okay? Like a bud. Your relationship is fragile. You need just the right amount of water, fertilizer, light. The plant is fragile. Now, once it's taken root, it's a little further along, it can be more tolerant, right? Drought tolerant once the roots are established. But in the beginning, relationships are so fragile that wrong information can go a long way against you, right? So here we have Lindsey's dad forewarning Mark that Lindsey's a lot. Her friends are giving them the Lindsey coping package the day after the wedding. Chris's friends are saying that he's opinionated, forewarning Alyssa she better hold her own. And these first impressions really do matter. Michael's sisters are saying that Michael really is negative. So you can imagine then, right? At the first sign of something wrong, you come back to this information. These people know this person better than I do. Oh my God, what do I not know? This is a sign that what they said is right. And so to me, it felt like, I would have liked if that feedback came a little bit later. I feel like the couple is all still very fragile. Okay, so now the couples get married, they're dancing, they're having fun, and I think, the reality sets in, right? Now we move on to the honeymoon. Now, I get that the producers want to build cohesion in the group. Hell, this is such a unique thing that's happening, right? Not too many couples go through this. Not too many people go on reality TV shows. They all need to kind of bond with one another. But I felt like the couples maybe could have been on a separate flight, right? Maybe they could have been in a separate car ride. I get it. They probably want to save money. But here's where we had that Lindsey episode that I thought was really painful for Mark. And he's just getting to know her, and now we've got this whole other thing. But now you've got couples talking to one another. You're going to talk about your partner and fear of missing out. Your guy's doing this and that, and there's a lot of comparison. To me, that gets pretty messy, right? It gets kind of convoluted pretty quickly. And to Alyssa's point, why not have one of the experts available? Now, she was pissed, but I think that if an expert had been there, what I would have loved to just see a talk, a general talk. Hey, listen, you just took a big leap of faith. You're, of course, going to feel ambivalent. This is a stranger you're sharing a bed with. This is a lot to digest. But, just download for them. Maybe have couples from previous seasons come on or have that videotape. But, add a little bit more support for people to understand what they're going through and normalize their feeling. Okay, so now after the honeymoon, which is supposed to be light and fun, but again, you're still sleeping with the stranger, right? We get back to Boston, right? They move into their apartments. And here's another glitch that happens, of course, between Jasmina and Michael, right? He doesn't disclose to her that he has 2 female roommates. And of course, this feels like it's set up for drama. I mean, how important is that? Are they going to go back to his apartment or are they going to move to a different apartment anyway? But I can see it from both their sides, right? Michael feels like, well, why do I need to disclose that if I'm not going to live there anymore? That was my previous life. But Jasmina thinks, what else might he be hiding, right? So here's what I would have wanted, okay? Here's the timing. That it's not until episode 15 before Pastor Calvin goes for the visits. Now, it's only day 10 of the marriage, but the damage can be done quickly, especially when you've got a budding plant that's so fragile, right? And I would have liked to have seen more, as I said, kind of prevention instead of intervention. I'm not sure if it's the therapist or it's the producers, but we do know that these shows are highly edited for dramatic effect. But if you really want the couples to stay married, why not use the experts sooner? Why not use them more? Okay, Michael is saying he knows he needs to be vulnerable, but he doesn't know how, right? Like, to say you need to be more vulnerable, what does that mean? You need facilitation, and Dr. Vivian, who did a great intervention to encourage vulnerability, but that to me came a little bit late. Now, here's what everyone also says. I watch lots of other reality dating shows. They all say that it's invaluable feedback and how much they grew from being on the show. Whether you have to, break up with multiple people quickly, whether you have to get engaged to a stranger, get married to a stranger. But could we facilitate the learning sooner? Do you have to wait to the reunion? Do you have to wait to watch this all back to get that feedback? So that's my question. Let me know what you think in the comments. Because if you've had the luxury to be videotaped, why not use the feedback sooner? Okay, take Lindsey, for example. Why wait until the reunion? Okay, we saw it in the reunion, the clip. Mark is complaining that Lindsey doesn't know when to stop, right? She disagrees. She thinks she's joking around. Well, roll the tape, but do it in real time. So bring in the therapist, say, hey, Mark is telling you to stop, and you didn't, and you think it's funny. How do you imagine that Mark feels right now when you do that? Okay, because in couples therapy, ideally this is what we do. And I've done this before where you actually videotape people and then they can see themselves. Okay, so you'd say obviously to Lindsey, imagine how he's feeling, and you're teaching empathy. Ask Olajuwon, okay, in all your history of dating, how many women want what you do? A traditional arrangement. But can you see in real time how Katina is feeling judged by you, how she's feeling that she's not good enough? Okay. Ask people what's going on for them. Ask Jasmina, you look scared of Michael. You're saying that he disrespects you. I don't think he means to intimidate you, but what is this reminding you of? Because for me, that's the nugget, right? The nugget is, I'm being triggered. This reminds me of something else, but you're not that person. And I need to have some distance and some separation. And that would be just icing on the cake if we could do that, right? Because the way that it's set up, the way the show is set up now, is that we decide for you. We decide who your mate is. But then you get to decide if this person is right for you to be married. But what's missing for me already is you are already a couple, right? And we're not talking about, like, for instance, competing needs. Let me give an example. Noi and Steve run into that problem with the noodles, right? Noi gets frustrated with him. She needs space. She leaves. Steve is freaked out. Where the heck did my wife go? If a therapist had said, Noi, what was going on for you? And maybe you intervened and said, but you can't do that. That's what you did in your personal single life, but you can't do that with a partner. You see, there would be these opportunities, but already, because time is passing and all these days go fast but long, right, there's resentment that builds. So if they could have had that information, I just feel like it would make a huge impact. Now, let's talk about some other interventions. The home visits, for instance. I thought that's an interesting exercise. Go back to where the person was born and raised, see their original family home. And what they're trying to do is build vulnerability, right? They're trying to get at affect. They have this inner child exercise. I love those exercises, but that's a very personal thing. That's a personal vulnerability, not necessarily a couple's vulnerability exercise. Because when I'm talking to my younger self at age 5, again, it's not really something that my partner might build compassion for me, but are we going to build romance? Okay? That's the question. And I saw for some of the couples, the home visits really built some closeness. Olajuwon got to show Katina where he lived. But for some other couples, like, Mark and Lindsey, oh my gosh, I might want to live here at my parents' house. I didn't feel like it moved the needle along. Okay. So now let's get to decision day. I didn't get a chance to make a prediction. But when it comes to decision day, I actually thought that more people would decide to break up. But what I didn't realize, and I could see the pressure, is that you're already all in, right? It's going to be painful to get a divorce. So in all honesty, you probably do let it ride, right? Because you don't have enough information. And according to what Mark said, you don't want to make a mistake, right? You don't want to regret that later, that you were already married and then you got divorced and how you're going to get remarried again. So I can see that. Now I thought, well, maybe they're getting paid to stay. It turns out that it's a very nominal amount. They get anywhere from $150 a day up to $1,500 per episode. But this is a very small amount, and all for 12 hours of filming, right? They all talked about hoping that at some point you can get back to reality when the filming stops. Now, of all the couples though, I do think that Steve and Noem were probably the best well-matched. Why? Because Noi says that Steve makes her feel safe. This is the sign, the indication of a well-matched couple. That she feels safe. One can say, well, maybe she's anxious. She has a lot of financial instability from her childhood. But he's doing something right. Now, of course, the producers want to make it seem like Steve is really, being resistant to get a job. Who knows? Maybe he did tell her that he has more money than she thinks, but that's where they go, right? Now, with Lindsey and Mark, I think they're a little bit too hot and cold. Lindsey is certainly doing a lot for Mark, but it feels to me a bit unsolicited. Like he's not asking for that, and he's protesting. With Katina and Elishawan, I would love to see Katina speaking up more. I know people have been worried about her. I think Olajuwon has a big heart, but I think he just doesn't know the reality of where she is. And maybe she feels some shame, like I should be further along in my life. He keeps reminding me that I've already gone to college, I'm done. But I'd love to see her holding her own, right? And I think he's been given this permission of the single focus. You get to decide what's right for you. And that's made her more anxious than she needed to be, right? But I think she would need to just say, hey, dude, I need more support from you. I'm going to be in school for a few more years, but then I'm going to be an equal breadwinner and we'll be better off, right? And with regards to Jasmina and Michael, there's a lot of growth for both of them. Michael in particular, he's breaking down. He's letting his walls down. Jasmina is also softening. I'm seeing her laugh more. I really like them as a couple, but I'm still thinking she needs someone more consistent, and it's such a stretch for him. So I think they need to obviously get out of the friend zone, and I'm sure that just seems like it's a little bit too late. So what can we learn from all of this? Yes. What can we learn? When it comes to matchmaking, I think of matching, more importantly, what your needs are and some of your wants, right? If you have a list of things that are really important and attraction for you is really important, well, then find that, right? But you have to weigh out what's most important for you. And you do then have to be responsible for talking about your needs, but you also need to talk about your needs through the lens of how your partner is hearing that. And that is the complexity, right? But getting real life feedback, another lesson, if you ever have the chance to be videotaped, if you ever have the chance to go to a couples workshop and they need volunteers, raise your hand, because it's incredibly powerful. It's the hardest when we're in real time, right? On the after parties, everybody can comment on everybody else's relationship, but it's not the same as it being your relationship in real time. And if you ever get the chance to get this feedback, don't be defensive, right? See it as a moment of clarity. Look a little bit deeper. Why did I act the way that I did? Was I scared? Was I pissed? Was I acting petty? And why? That is the key learning point. All right, so let me know what you think of my feedback of the show. I tried very hard to condense many hours into a shorter period of time, but let me know what you're thinking about Married at First Sight, and then I'll catch you after the reunion part 2.